Whispers of the desert. The sun hammered at Dusty River's leathery skin, each ray a tiny, insistent percussion. He narrowed his eyes, the heat blurring the horizon into a mirage. The whispering desert lived up to the legend. A restless zephyr, an eternal nomad, sculpted the canyons and mesas, bearing tales of sand and age-old secrets. Lost souls, broken oaths, the pitiless struggle to endure. Dusty was fluent in its harsh dialect. Rosie, his steadfast Appaloosa, trudged onward, stirring up puffs of russet earth. They hunted strays, cattle seduced from the herd by the phantom promise of verdant fields. A thankless and lonely task, yet it defined him. It was all that remained. Hours dissolved into one another, the landscape a monotonous expanse of ochre and sepia stretching to infinity. Just as despair began to gnaw at him, a fleeting motion snagged his attention. A diminutive, brown calf, severed from its dam, bleated weakly by a parched wash. Dusty exhaled a weary sound. The third this week. He dismounted, Rosie shifting with impatience. Startled, the calf tottered, attempting escape on spindly legs. Dusty approached deliberately, murmuring reassurances. "Easy, little one. No harm intended." He managed to hem it in, carefully scooping it into his arms. It quivered, its tiny heart a frantic drum against his palm. He stroked its downy coat, a faint smile gracing his lips. He hadn't cradled such fragility in years. Locating the herd proved simple. They were congregated near a paltry spring, a swirling kaleidoscope of hides. The calf's mother, a rangy matriarch, bellowed with concern as Dusty drew near. He released the calf, watching it bound toward its mother, nuzzling her urgently. The cow responded with a maternal lick, a silent benediction. Dusty swung back on a Rosie, a brief warmth blooming in his chest. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. He guided Rosie westward, the sunset transforming the firmament into a tapestry of flame and lavender. Time to camp. He discovered a niche beneath a colossal rock, affording scant shelter from the pervasive wind. As he gathered kindling, memories surfaced, unwelcome guests dragging him back to a realm of pain. Phantoms of faces danced in his mind, smiles extinguished, voices silenced forever. Sarah, his wife, her laughter like delicate wind chimes on a summer's day. Caleb, his son, eyes sparkling with mischief. Gone. Both vanished, claimed by a fever that had ravaged the town like an inferno. He knelt by the nascent fire, the flames devouring the tinder, casting spectral shadows on the stone. He gazed into the heart of the blaze, lost in the swirling embers, seeing not fire, but their visages. He retrieved his harmonica, its silver polished smooth by time and grief. He played a somber melody, a dirge for what was lost, a supplication for what could have been. The tune intertwined with a whispering wind, a solitary requiem in the vast stillness. He consumed a meager repast of beans and jerky, rinsing it down with tepid water from his canteen. The desert air sharpened with the fall of night, the stars blazing with a brilliance unseen in more settled lands. He cocooned himself in his bedroll, the corsel a slight irritation against his skin. Just as sleep began to claim him, he detected it, a subtle sound carried on the breeze. Initially, he dismissed it as a coyote's lament or the scurry of a desert creature. But then it came again, a cry, faint, yet distinct, human. He bolted upright, every sense on alert. The wind spiraled around him, confounding his attempt to locate the sound's origin. He strained, listening intently. There again, fainter this time, almost swallowed by the wind's breath. It sounded like a woman. He shut his bedroll, seized his rifle, and scaled the rock formation. The desert unfolded before him, an ebon ocean sprinkled with starlight. He listened, his pulse throbbing in his ears. The cry echoed once more, a little closer. It seemed to emanate from the south, beyond the adjacent ridge. He faltered. It could be a snare, a decoy to lure him into a deadly trap. This land harbored desperate souls, Men willing to kill for a mount or a sip of water. But what if it wasn't? What if someone genuinely needed aid? He pictured Sarah, Caleb. He recalled the utter powerlessness as he watched them fade, unable to save them. He couldn't disregard this plea. He simply couldn't. He descended from the rocks, his resolve solidified. He saddled Rosie, verifying his rifle and ammunition. He steered her south, toward the sound of anguish, into the soul of the whispering desert. He didn't know what awaited him, but he knew he had to answer the call. Quicksand and courage. The stagecoach lurched and swayed on the barely discernible path, each rock a fresh assault on Lily's composure. She clutched her worn valise, knuckles gleaming like bone. Jed Barlow's shadow fell longer each day over redemption, and she'd be damned if she became just another trinket in his collection. Her pulse thrummed a frantic tattoo against her ribs in the quiet desert night. Then the air exploded. Gunfire ripped through the stillness. The stagecoach bucked like a wild bronco as the driver fought for control. Lily cried out as it veered wildly, slamming her against the far side. Through a spiderweb of fractured glass, she made out figures on horseback, faces masked by crimson bandanas, circling the disabled coach. Barlow's hounds. Panic threatened to choke her, but she forced it down. Everything was unraveling. As the outlaws descended, bellowing threats, a sliver of opportunity presented itself. The rear door was splintered, not sealed. Scrambling over dislodged baggage, she delivered a sharp kick, sending it crashing outwards, and tumbled into the welcoming darkness. No looking back. She fled, lungs burning, the unforgiving terrain tearing at her flimsy boots. Thorns clawed at her dress, ripping the delicate silk. Gunshots and shouts dissolved into the distance as she plunged into the ebony depths. Exhaustion clawed at her, but terror spurred her onwards. Then her foot sank into something yielding, something insidious. A choked gasp escaped her as she recognized the nightmare. Quicksand. Each desperate struggle only worsened her plight. The cold, viscous sludge tightened its grip, pulling her deeper into its maw. A raw cry tore from her throat, a fragile sound swallowed by the vast emptiness. Help! Is anyone there? The sand now reached mid-calf, a clammy, suffocating embrace. She writhed, tears blurring the jagged horizon. Barlow's leering face danced behind her eyelids, stoking the flames of her fear. Help me! She shrieked, voice ragged. Then, cutting through the blood pounding in her ears, she detected it, the unmistakable cadence of approaching hooves. Hope bloomed, a tentative blossom in the gloom. Dusty Rivers hauled back on Diablo, his gaze sweeping the desolate landscape. The faint plea had struck a chord deep within him, a primal instinct to shield the vulnerable. He dismounted, his eyes settling on a disturbed patch of ground. Drawing closer, he saw her, a young woman, face smudged with dirt and etched with despair, succumbing to the earth's embrace. Easy now, he said, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly gentle. Don't fight it. Lily's eyes widened, a wave of relief washing over her. I can't, she stammered. I'm trapped. Dusty sized up the situation in an instant. Quicksand offered no mercy. He had to move with speed. Uncoiling his lasso from Diablo's saddle, he fashioned a careful loop. I'm going to throw you this. Grab on tight. No letting go. Lily nodded, her breath coming in ragged bursts. Dusty tossed the rope, the loop settling neatly around her shoulders. Now listen, he instructed, his tone unwavering. When I say pull, everything you've got, but smooth, steady. He secured the other end to Diablo's saddle horn. Ready. Lily's gaze met his, stark with apprehension. Pull. Diablo leaned into the strain, muscles rippling. Lily summoned a reserve of strength, her small frame trembling under the colossal effort. Slowly, agonizingly, her leg yielded. The sand relinquished its hold with a sickening slurp. Dusty coaxed Diablo forward, inch by excruciating inch, until Lily finally broke free. She crumpled on his solid ground, gasping for breath, her body a trembling wreck. Dusty knelt beside her, his gaze probing her face for injuries. Hurt. She shook her head, tears still coursing down her cheeks. Just terrified. He helped her rise, his strong hands offering steady support. What happened out here? Lily hesitated, fear lingering in her eyes. I was escaping. Escaping who? She swallowed hard. Jed Barlo. The name hung between them, a dark cloud. Dusty's jaw tightened. He knew Barlo. All of Redemption knew Barlo. He wants to force me to marry him. Lily continued, her voice a mere whisper. I refused. So I ran. Dusty's eyes narrowed. He sent those thugs after you. Lily affirmed with a nod. They ambushed the stage. He studied her, seeing the indomitable spirit shining through the terror. No wilting flower here. This was a woman battling for her autonomy. Something stirred within him, a long dormant ember flickering back to life. You're safe now, he assured her, his voice surprisingly tender. I won't let him touch you. A haven in the hills. Dusty hoisted Lily into his arms. The setting sun painted the desert landscape in fiery hues of orange and purple, a stark contrast to the chilling fear that still clung to her. She was light, almost fragile, yet he sensed a core of steel beneath the delicate exterior. He adjusted his grip, making sure she was secure. Hold tight, Miss Moreau. It's a bit of a trek. He started towards the foothills, the rough terrain no match for his practiced stride. Lily, nestled against his chest, inhaled the scent of leather, sweat, and something indefinably dusty. It was a comforting scent, a promise of safety in this desolate land. The rhythmic thud of his heart against her ear was a steady drumbeat, a counterpoint to the frantic rhythm of her own. They walked in silence, broken only by the occasional call of a night bird. As they climbed higher, the air grew cooler, the desert scrub giving way to gnarled juniper and pinyon pine. Finally, nestled in a small clearing, a cabin emerged from the shadows. It was a simple structure built of logs and stone, with a smoking chimney promising warmth and respite. Dusty gently lowered Lily to the ground near the cabin door. Welcome to my humble abode, Miss Moreau. It ain't much, but it's safe. He pushed the door open, revealing a single room lit by the flickering light of a hearth. The air inside was close but welcoming, filled with the scent of wood smoke and dried herbs. He guided her to a rough-hewn chair near the fire. Sit. Rest. I'll fetch some water to clean those cuts. He moved with an economy of motion, his movements precise and efficient. He filled a basin with water from a bucket near the hearth and returned with a clean cloth. Kneeling before her, he gently began to clean the cuts on her arms and face. His touch was surprisingly gentle, his gaze focused and intent. Lily watched him, mesmerized. He was a study in contrasts, a rugged exterior hiding a tender heart. How did you know? She asked softly, breaking the silence. Dusty glanced up, his eyes, the color of the desert sky after a storm, met hers. Know what, Miss Moreau? That I needed help, that I was running from something. He paused, his callous thumb tracing the line of a cut on her cheek. A woman's eyes don't lie. Miss Moreau, yours were filled with fear and a fire that wouldn't be quenched. He finished cleaning the cuts and began to bandage them with strips of clean cloth. Besides, he added with a wry smile, Barlow's reputation precedes him. Once he finished tending to her wounds, he added wood to the fire, coaxing the flames higher. I'll fix us some supper. Then you can tell me what you're running from, if you're willing. As they sat by the fire, eating a simple meal of beans and cornbread, Lily began to recount her story. She spoke of redemption, of Jed Barlow's cruel tyranny, of her father's forced servitude, and of her desperate flight. Her voice, initially hesitant, grew stronger as she spoke, the firelight reflecting in her determined eyes. Dusty listened intently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he simply nodded. Barlow's a snake. He needs to be dealt with. He paused, stirring the embers with a stick. But that's a problem for another day. Tonight, you rest. Later, as the fire dwindled to embers, they shared stories of their lives. Dusty spoke of his life as a rancher, of his love for the land, and of the injustices he had witnessed. Lily, in turn, spoke of her dreams of opening a dress shop, of creating beautiful things, of bringing joy to others. As they talked, a sense of connection grew between them, a shared understanding that transcended their different backgrounds. "You're a strong woman, Lily Moreau," Dusty said softly, using her first name for the first time. "Stronger than you know." Lily met his gaze, a faint smile playing on her lips. "And you, Dusty Rivers, are a good man, better than you give yourself credit for." The silence that followed was comfortable, filled with unspoken feelings. The fire crackled and popped, casting dancing shadows on the walls of the cabin. The desert wind howled outside, but inside, a haven had been created, a haven of warmth, safety, and burgeoning affection. Barlo's shadow. The morning dawned crisp and clear, painting the valley in hues of gold and rose. Lily, feeling a strength she hadn't known she possessed, insisted on helping Dusty with the morning chores. She gathered firewood, her movements still tentative, but gaining confidence with each task. Dusty watched her, a silent acknowledgement of her resilience in his eyes. As they walked back to the cabin, Lily stopped abruptly, pointing to the soft earth near the creek. "Tracks," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Dusty knelt, his gaze hardening. Fresh boot prints, deep and heavy, marred the undisturbed ground. More than one set, and heading directly toward the cabin. Dusty's jaw tightened. He straightened, his hand instinctively moving towards the rifle leaning against the cabin wall. "Barlo," he muttered, the name a low growl. "He's found us." He ushered Lily inside, his movements quick and decisive. "Stay here," he instructed, grabbing his rifle. "Bolt the door." He moved outside, scanning the trees. The air hung heavy with the threat of violence. The morning's beauty, now a cruel mockery. He didn't have to wait long. 5 men emerged from the tree lean, their faces grim, their eyes cold. At their head was Jed Barlo, his presence radiating a palpable menace even at a distance. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "Rivers," Barlo bellowed, his voice echoing across the valley. "Hand over the girl." Dusty stood his ground, rifle raised but not aimed. "She's not yours to take, Barlo." Barlo chuckled, a harsh, grating sound. "Everything is mine to take, Rivers. You know that. Don't make this difficult. I don't want to spill blood, but I will." He paused, letting his words sink in. "She stole from me. She belongs back where she belongs." Lily, peering through a crack in the cabin door, felt a chill run down her spine. Barlo's voice was like ice, promising pain and domination. She gripped the rough wood, her knuckles white. "She's under my protection now," Dusty replied, his voice calm but firm. "You want her, you'll have to come through me." Barlo's men shifted, their hands hovering near their holstered guns. The tension thickened, palpable as the morning mist. For a moment, the only sound was the rustle of leaves in the wind. Then Barlo smiled, a slow, cruel expression that didn't reach his eyes. "You always were a stubborn fool, Rivers. But I admire your loyalty. Pity it's misplaced." He nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward carrying a length of rough-hewn wood. The man approached the cabin, his face devoid of emotion, and with a brutal swiftness, nailed the wood to the door. On it, crudely carved, was a skull. Lily gasped, recoiling from the sight. The symbol was unmistakable, a warning, a promise of death. Barlo turned his horse, his eyes locking with Dusty's one last time. "Consider this a down payment, Rivers. You can't hide her forever, and when I find her, you'll wish you'd never crossed me." He spat on the ground, then spurred his horse, his men following close behind. They disappeared back into the trees, leaving behind an unnerving silence and the grim symbol of their threat. Dusty lowered his rifle, his gaze fixed on the nailed wood. He felt Lily's presence behind him, a fragile warmth against the cold reality of their situation. He knew this was just the beginning. Barlo wouldn't give up easily. He was a predator, and Lily was his prey. And now, Dusty was standing in the way. He turned to Lily, his expression grim. "He'll be back," he said, his voice low. "We need to be ready." The skull seemed to grin mockingly from the door, a constant reminder of the danger that loomed. The haven they had found was now a target, and the shadow of Jed Barlo had fallen upon them, darkening their hopes and promising a storm to come. Preparing for the storm, the air felt weighted, a suffocating blanket forecasting the tempest Barlow's threat signified. A primal unease settled deep within Dusty, a dull throb echoing past betrayals. Lily wouldn't become another. "All right, Lily Bug," he rumbled, softening his gruff tone with a rare tenderness. "Time for a crash course." From the rack, he claimed his Winchester, the firearm's chill a sharp contrast to the hearth's radiating heat. Lily's gaze followed, her trepidation vying with burgeoning resolve. "I've never even touched one." "Never a bad time to start," Dusty countered, checking the mechanism. Outside, a flurry of indignant clucking erupted as chickens scattered from their path. He arranged a line of dented cans atop a weathered fence post. "First rules. Treat this piece like it's always loaded. Never aim at anything you don't want to destroy. And keep that finger straight until you're set to fire." He demonstrated the proper hold, stock nestled firmly, cheek pressed against the cool steel. Step by step, he coached her through stance, breath control, and that gradual, measured trigger pull. Her first shot went wide, sending up a puff of dust a yard off target. "Easy now," Dusty murmured, his hand hovering near her back, a silent reassurance. "Slow your breathing. Lock onto your target." Lily focused, her brow furrowed in concentration. This time, the bullet struck a can, sending it spinning off the post. A fleeting smile graced her lips. Shot after shot followed, each finding its mark with increasing precision. The rifle's sharp report shattered the quiet, a defiant shout against the coming storm. Later, as the sun bled orange and violet across the horizon, Dusty led Blue from the stable. Riding's next. Lily regarded the horse, a magnificent animal of coiled power and fluid grace, with mingled awe and trepidation. "He's immense. He's a sweetheart," Dusty soothed, patting Blue's muscular flank. "He'll look after you." He schooled her in mounting, rein handling, communicating with the animal through subtle shifts of posture and pressure. Initially, Lily was rigid, her grip vice-like on the reins. Yet as she eased, began to sense Blue's rhythmic stride, a thrill surged through her. They circled the clearing, the breeze whipping through her hair, the fading sunlight warming her face. While Dusty armed Lily with practical skills, she brought her own unique ingenuity to bear. She envisioned the cabin not just as shelter, but as a chrysalis, a place to spin a protective cocoon. Extracting pigments from berries and plants, she disguised the cabin walls, merging it with the surrounding woods. Painting in shadow and light, disrupting the straight lines, obscuring it from prying eyes. "Like this," she instructed, showing Dusty how to streak mud and charcoal across the wood, breaking up the stark lines. "We want to make it disappear." She wove fallen branches and thorny vines into makeshift barriers around the perimeter. Painstakingly spun twine from plant fibers became a network of tripwires, linked to tin cans brimming with pebbles and dry beans. Any unwary creature or careless footstep would trigger a clamorous warning. Dusty observed, impressed by her resourcefulness. He'd always depended on raw might and firepower, but Lily offered a more subtle approach, more cunning. She was turning their sanctuary into a fortress, not with stone walls, but with a tapestry of deception. One evening, as they mended clothes and honed blades by the fire's glow, Lily met Dusty's gaze, her eyes steely. "We will be ready," she declared. "He won't get me without a fight." Dusty reached for her hand, his rough digits closing around hers. "He won't get you at all," he promised, his voice a low, gravelly vow. "I won't let him." The tempest gathered, but they would confront it together, armed with courage, ingenuity, and a love forged in the crucible of their harsh world. The air pulsed with unspoken promises, a fragile tendril of hope unfurling in the face of looming peril. Cabin under siege. The first sign wasn't a shout, but the frantic cawing of crows. Dusty was already awake, the scent of wood smoke and Lily's lavender soap filling the cabin. He'd been up for hours, sharpening knives, checking the perimeter, The crow's alarm was different, though, sharper, laced with panic. He nudged Lily gently. "Wake up, darling. Company's coming." Lily was instantly alert, her eyes wide and clear. She grabbed the rifle leaning against the wall. "Barlo, feels like it," Dusty said, peering through a crack in the boarded-up window. The first rays of dawn painted the landscape in shades of gray and gold, revealing riders approaching from the east. 6 of them, maybe more, hard-faced men on horseback, led by a figure whose broad shoulders and arrogant posture could only belong to Jed Barlo. "They're not even trying to be quiet," Lily whispered, her voice surprisingly steady. "They don't need to be," Dusty replied grimly. "They think they got us cornered." He positioned himself by the front window, rifle ready. "Remember the plan." The riders spread out, encircling the cabin. Barlo reined in his horse, a dark stallion that pawed the ground impatiently. "Rivers," he bellowed, his voice carrying easily across the distance. "Come out peacefully, and maybe, just maybe, I'll let the girl walk away." Dusty spat on the floor. "Go to hell, Barlo." Barlo laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Suit yourself." He raised his hand, and the attack began. Gunfire erupted, bullets splintering the wood around the windows. Dusty returned fire, his shots precise and deadly. He saw one of the riders clutch his shoulder and fall from his horse. Lily, meanwhile, was covering the back of the cabin, her smaller rifle barking with surprising force. "They're trying to flush us out." Lily yelled over the din. Dusty knew she was right. The barrage was relentless, designed to keep them pinned down. He risked a glance through the window. 2 of Barlo's men were trying to flank the cabin, using the trees for cover. "Time for your inventions, Lily," Dusty said, a grim smile on his face. Lily nodded and grabbed a burning branch from the fireplace. She tossed it out the back window, igniting the pile of dried leaves and pine needles she'd carefully arranged. A thick cloud of smoke billowed up, obscuring the back of the cabin. The 2 flanking men coughed and stumbled back, momentarily disoriented. Dusty seized the opportunity, firing rapidly through the window. He saw one of them fall, the other retreating into the woods. The attack intensified. Bullets ripped through the roof, sending splinters raining down on them. One ricocheted off the metal plate Dusty had fastened to the wall, buzzing past his ear. He felt a stinging pain in his side. "Dusty," Lily cried, crawling towards him. "You're hit." He glanced down. A dark stain was spreading across his shirt. It wasn't a clean shot, but it stung like a hornet. "Just a scratch," he lied, gritting his teeth. "Like hell it is," Lily snapped, tearing a strip of cloth from her petticoat. She pressed it against the wound, her hands trembling slightly. "Hold this tight." The gunfire continued, unrelenting. Dusty knew they couldn't hold out forever. He had to do something, create a diversion. He looked at Lily, her face pale but determined. "I need to draw them away from the cabin," he said. "Cover me." "No," Lily protested. "It's too dangerous. I don't see we have much choice." Dusty pulled himself to his feet, ignoring the pain in his side. He grabbed his Winchester and took a deep breath. "Ready," Lily nodded, her eyes filled with fear and something else, fierce determination. Dusty threw open the front door and charged out, firing from the hip. The suddenness of his attack caught Barlo's men off guard. They scrambled for cover as Dusty ran towards the trees, drawing their fire. He heard Lily's rifle behind him, providing covering fire. He reached the edge of the woods and ducked behind a thick oak. He risked a glance back at the cabin. That's when he saw it. One of Barlo's men had circled around and was sneaking up on the cabin from the far side, hidden by the smoke. He had a clear shot at Lily. "Lily, behind you," Dusty shouted, but his voice was lost in the gunfire. He knew he was too far away to help. He watched in horror as the man raised his rifle. Then a flash of movement. Lily had seen him. She didn't have time to aim. Instead, she grabbed the pot of boiling water she'd been using to make coffee and hurled it at the attacker. The water splashed over him, scalding his face and chest. He screamed and dropped his rifle, clutching his face in agony. Lily didn't hesitate. She grabbed her rifle and fired, hitting him squarely in the chest. He crumpled to the ground. Dusty stared in disbelief. Lily, who had been afraid to touch a gun just days ago, had just saved his life. But their respite was short-lived. The remaining men, enraged by the loss of their comrade, renewed their attack with even greater ferocity. Dusty knew they were running out of time. He stumbled back towards the cabin, his vision blurring. He needed to get back to Lily to protect her. He didn't want to die. Not like this. He wanted a future with her beyond the borders of the law. The long road ahead. The last shot echoed in the sudden silence. Dusty leaned against the doorframe, the acrid smell of gunpowder stinging his nostrils. "We can't stay here, Lily. Not anymore." He pushed himself upright, wincing. His arm throbbed, the makeshift bandage already stained crimson. Lily, her face smudged with soot, nodded, her eyes wide but resolute. "Where do we go?" "Away from Barlo. Away from here." He scanned the cabin, mentally cataloging their meager supplies. "We ride. Now." They moved quickly, driven by a shared urgency. Dusty gathered what little food remained, dried beans, a handful of biscuits. Lily packed blankets and a small pouch of the gold dust she'd managed to salvage. Her father's journals she tucked into her saddlebag, a tangible link to the life she'd known. She glanced around one last time, a ghost of a smile touching her lips as she looked at the drawing she made of Dusty and his horse. Outside, the horses stood restlessly. Dusty checked their water skins, half full of best. He knew the desert was unforgiving, and every drop counted. He helped Lily mount, his touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Ready." She met his gaze, her fear overshadowed by a newfound determination. "Ready." They rode east, away from the setting sun, the familiar landscape of the valley receding behind them. The land stretched before them, an endless expanse of rock and scrub, shimmering under the harsh afternoon light. Dusty set a steady pace, conserving the horse's energy. He knew Barlo wouldn't give up easily. The man was like a persistent desert wind, always nipping at your heels. Hours bled into each other. The sun beat down relentlessly, turning the air thick and heavy. The horse's hooves kicked up dust devils that danced across the barren ground. Lily's throat was parched, and her lips felt cracked. She pulled her hat lower, shielding her face from the glare. Dusty noticed her discomfort. "We need to find water soon." He scanned the horizon, his brow furrowed. There used to be a well a few miles east of here. Abandoned, but maybe, just maybe, as if summoned by his words, the wind picked up, swirling dust into a blinding vortex. The sky turned an ominous shade of gray. "A sandstorm. Hold on tight," Dusty shouted, pulling his bandana over his nose and mouth. He urged his horse forward, squinting through the swirling sand. Lily followed close behind, her face buried in her horse's mane. The wind howled like a banshee, whipping sand against their skin. It stung their eyes, making it almost impossible to see. The horses whinnied in distress, fighting against the gale. They pressed on, guided by instinct and a desperate hope. The storm raged for what seemed like an eternity. When it finally began to subside, the landscape had been transformed. Dunes shifted, landmarks vanished. They were disoriented, lost in a sea of sand. Dusty coughed, spitting out grit. He looked around, his heart sinking. He'd lost his bearings. "Lily, are you all right?" She nodded weakly, brushing sand from her hair. "I'm fine. Just thirsty." He knew they couldn't afford to panic. He took a deep breath, trying to recall the terrain. He remembered a cluster of jagged rocks near the well. He pointed towards a distant, hazy outline. "That way, I think." They rode for another hour, the sun beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Just when their hope was dwindling, they saw it, the cluster of rocks, rising like skeletal fingers from the sand. And nestled amongst them, the dark, gaping mouth of the well. They dismounted, their legs shaky. The well was old, its stone walls crumbling, but it was there. Dusty peered into the darkness, his heart pounding with anticipation. He lowered a rope attached to a bucket, the silence broken only by the creaking of the rope and the rustling of the wind. He felt the bucket hit bottom. Slowly, carefully, he began to haul it up. The weight was almost unbearable. Finally, the bucket emerged from the darkness, filled with cool, clear water. Lily gasped, relief flooding her face. She knelt beside the bucket, cupping her hands and drinking deeply. Dusty followed suit, the water a balm to his parched throat. He watched Lily, the setting sun illuminating her face, turning her hair into a halo of gold. He saw her strength, her resilience, her quiet beauty. He knew then, with a certainty that settled deep in his soul, that he would do anything to protect her. As darkness fell, they made camp near the well. The air was cooler now, the desert breeze whispering through the rocks. They shared a meager meal of dried beans and biscuits, their conversation hushed. "Thank you, Dusty," Lily said softly, her eyes meeting his. "For everything." He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We're not out of the woods yet, Lily. The road ahead is long, but we'll face it together." Walks with Wind's wisdom. The sun beat down with merciless intensity. Lily, her lips cracked and bleeding, stumbled, and Dusty caught her. He hadn't tasted water since yesterday morning, and the canteen felt mocking in its emptiness. He scanned the horizon, the shimmering heat playing tricks on his eyes. Then he saw them. Silhouetted against the ridge, they appeared as ghosts, mounted warriors, their faces painted in stark white and red. At least a dozen. Dusty pushed Lily behind him, his hand instinctively reaching for the rifle he'd salvaged. "Hold your fire," he rasped, though his throat felt like sandpaper. "They haven't attacked." The warriors descended, their ponies sure-footed on the treacherous terrain. They surrounded Dusty and Lily in silence, their eyes, dark and assessing, missing nothing. The air thrummed with unspoken tension. Dusty kept his gaze level, refusing to show fear, but his heart hammered against his ribs. From the center of the group, a figure emerged. He was older, his face etched with the wisdom of the desert. A single eagle feather adorned his braided hair. He dismounted with a fluid grace that belied his age. This was their leader. "I am Walks with Wind," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate with the earth itself. "Why do you trespass on our land?" Dusty swallowed, trying to moisten his parched throat. "We mean no harm. We're just trying to get away." Walks with Wind's gaze flickered to Lily, taking in her bruised face and weary posture. He spoke in his native tongue to one of his warriors, who then offered Lily a waterskin. She accepted it with trembling hands, drinking slowly, cautiously. "Who do you run from?" Walks with Wind asked, his eyes returning to Dusty. Dusty hesitated. He wasn't sure how much to reveal, but there was something in the chief's gaze, a depth of understanding that made him trust him. "A man named Barlo. He wants Lily." Walks with Wind nodded slowly. "Barlo. He is a snake that poisons the land. We have seen his kind before." He paused, considering. "You are welcome to rest in our village. We will offer you food and water. But know this, nothing is given freely. We expect respect for our ways." The village was nestled in a hidden canyon, a haven of cool shade and flowing water. Women were grinding corn, children played amongst the adobe huts, and the air was filled with the scent of roasting meat. It was a world away from the harsh reality of the desert, a testament to the resilience of life. Lily sat by the stream, washing the dust from her face and arms. The water was cool and refreshing, a balm to her aching body. She watched the children playing, their laughter echoing through the canyon. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. Dusty stood with Walks with Wind, overlooking the village. "Why help us?" he asked. "Barlow's greed threatens us all," Walks with Wind replied, gesturing towards the horizon. "He takes what is not his. He cares nothing for the land or its people. Your fight is now our fight." Walks with Wind spent the next few days teaching Dusty and Lily the ways of the desert. He showed them how to track animals, reading the subtle signs in the sand. He taught them how to find water, even in the driest of places, following the flight of birds or the direction of the wind. Lily, surprisingly, proved to be a quick study, her artistic eye translating well to the nuances of tracking. "The desert speaks," Walks with Wind explained one afternoon as they knelt beside a set of faint tracks. "You must learn to listen." He pointed to a small indentation in the sand. Rabbit. He was here recently. He heads towards the setting sun, where there is a small spring. Lily examined the track closely, her brow furrowed in concentration. How can you be so sure? Walks with Wind smiled, a rare and precious thing. The desert tells its secrets to those who are patient and observant. Dusty, despite his years of experience in the West, found himself humbled by Walk with Wind's knowledge. He realized how much he still had to learn. He was a cowboy, used to riding horses and shooting guns. Walks with Wind was a part of the desert, as integral to it as the rocks and the cacti. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Walks with Wind approached Dusty. Barlo will come, he said, his voice grave. He will not give up so easily. We must be ready. He held out a bow and a quiver of arrows. Learn to use these. They are silent and deadly. And, he added, his eyes twinkling, they do not require bullets. Showdown at Shadow Pass. Shadow Pass yawned before them, a gash in the Vermilion Cliffs, their only recourse towards redemption. A cold dread settled in Dusty's stomach. Walks with Wind's warning echoed. Barlo expected them. Cheyenne scouts confirmed it. Beside him, Lily's expression was a rigid mask. Walks with Wind's rifle a dark promise across her lap. Her fear had been tempered by relentless practice into something akin to tempered steel. Ready, Dusty murmured. Her answering gaze held a defiant spark. Born ready. They hadn't gone far into the defile when a shout shattered the stillness. Hold it there, Rivers. Barlo materialized from behind a rock slide, his posse spreading out a human barricade. Heat shimmered off the ground in ghostly mirages, mirroring the volatile tension. Barlo, Dusty greeted him, his hand instinctively moving towards his Colt. Didn't think you had the spine to face me yourself. Barlo's sneer flashed a gold tooth. I'm a man who settles accounts personally, Rivers, particularly those involving stolen brides and pilfered property. He indicated Lily with a sweep of his hand. Turn her over, and maybe, just maybe, you walk away breathing. With a defiant gesture, Lily urged her mount forward, drawing alongside Dusty. I'm not chattel, Barlo. I am a woman, and I will not be bartered like some sack of grain. Her voice resonated within the narrow space, clear and unwavering. A ripple went through Barlo's men. They'd anticipated resistance, but not this. Think you can hide behind this savage? Barlo spat, gesturing toward the heights where Walks with Wind and his warriors stood like statues, faces painted for battle. Lily ignored him, her focus on the men behind Barlo. You all know the kind of man he is. You've seen his deeds. He feasts on the vulnerable, robs the hardworking, and silences anyone who speaks out. How many families has he broken? How many lives extinguished for his insatiable greed? Her words hung, heavy with truth. Some of Barlo's men shifted, unable to meet her gaze. Barlo's face twisted in fury. Shut your lying mouth, you little. Before he could finish the phrase, Lily's voice rose, amplified by the acoustics of the pass. He cheated my father. He stole our land. He forced me into a marriage I detested, all to seize our mine. A collective gasp rose from the townspeople, who had cautiously followed Dusty and Lily, now positioned alongside the Cheyenne on the ridge. They sought justice, to wrench their town from Barlo's suffocating grip. She's lying, Barlo roared, but a tremor of doubt ran through his voice. Dusty saw his opening. With a decisive motion, he drew his Colt, the metallic snick cutting through the air like a viper's hiss. It's over, Barlo. Your reign of terror ends now. The pass erupted in chaos. Gunshots echoed, stinging the air with smoke and acrid fumes. Dusty fought with the desperate fury of a cornered animal and a fierce protectiveness towards Lily. Arrows streaked down from the heights, disrupting Barlo's ranks. Lily, surprisingly adept, felled Barlo's men one by one. The townspeople, armed with whatever they could muster, charged into the fray, their long-simmering anger unleashed. Barlo, realizing his advantage had evaporated, tried to flee, but Dusty intercepted him, dragging him from his horse. They wrestled in the dirt, a brutal, desperate struggle. Dusty, fueled by righteous indignation, gained the upper hand, pinning Barlo beneath him. "This is for everyone you've hurt," Dusty snarled, his voice tight. He raised his fist, but before the blow could land, Lily stepped forward. "Let him face justice, Dusty. Let him answer for his sins." Dusty hesitated, then slowly released Barlo. He rose, chest heaving, and yielded the ground to Lily. Walks with Wind and his warriors descended, encircling Barlo and his dwindling band. The townspeople surged forward, their expressions grim. Barlo, defeated and exposed, was led away, his tyranny vanquished. His men, broken and scattered, either surrendered or vanished into the desert. The air cleared, the smoke drifting away, revealing a vista of hard-won liberation. The townspeople erupted in cheers that bounced off the canyon walls. Walks with Wind offered Dusty a silent nod, his eyes conveying deep respect and fellowship. Dusty turned to Lily, his heart overflowing with love and admiration. "We did it," he rasped. Lily smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "We did it together." Back in redemption, the townspeople began the arduous climb towards recovery, free from Barlow's shadow. Lily and Dusty, aided by Walks with Wind and the Cheyenne, labored tirelessly alongside them. Dusty, shedding the ghosts of his past, found peace in Lily's love and the fulfillment of safeguarding those in need. He established a small ranch, raising horses and cattle, his days imbued with purpose and a newfound sense of belonging. Lily, channeling her creativity and empathy, founded a school for redemption's children, nurturing their ability to read, write, and envision a brighter horizon. She also learned the healing arts from the Cheyenne women, using her knowledge to tend to the sick and wounded. One evening, as the sun bled across the western sky, painting the clouds with fire, Dusty and Lily sat on their porch, watching the first stars emerge. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found you in that quicksand?" Lily murmured, her voice a wisp of sound. Dusty took her hand, his grasp both gentle and reassuring. "I try not to. All that matters is that I found you, and we're here, together." He leaned in and kissed her, a kiss that spoke of love, gratitude, and a future built on unwavering loyalty and mutual respect. They had faced peril, conquered hardship, and discovered their salvation in each other's arms. Their love, forged in the flames of adversity, served as a guiding light in the harsh landscape of the West.